Hello, everybody,
Hi there.
and welcome to
EVIL Asterisk Podcast
with Jeannie.
And Luis.
We saw
Nightsiren,
also known as Svetlonok. That's the original Slovakian title. The director is Tereza Nvotová, and the writers are Barbora, Namerova, and Tereza Nvotová. Female-led film, very, very indie, from Slovakia. Let me read the IMDb description. A young woman returns to her native mountain village, searching for answers about her troubled childhood. But as she tries to uncover the truth, ancient superstitions lead the villagers to accuse her of witchcraft and murder. Genres, as listed on IMDb, include folk horror, drama, horror, and mystery. And Luis and I also thought it might be considered horror adjacent. This film was very well made. It was quite atmospheric, and it was nice to see the fact that it was filmed in Slovakia. So we're seeing something very different from what we normally see in an indie film.
This is really an interesting film. It's small, supposedly only about 1.5 million euro for the budget, and still it's incredibly effective. It's very atmospheric, draws you in to this kind of fascinating world that, while it seems almost like a period piece, there's modern technology throughout, even if it's kind of in the background. So there's modern cars, electronics, there's cell phones and everything. But because this is a small village in Eastern Europe, in Slovakia, it feels very alien for anyone who lives in the West or even someone in Asia. It feels like something that's basically ripped out of a fairy tale.
The movie opens with an incredible scene with one young girl hiding in a cabin in a basement. We hear the sound of an adult character. It sounds very scary. We're not sure if it's a mother, a witch, or what, coming after her. Clearly, this girl is scared, and we're on her side.
Yeah, and this older woman seems to be trying to keep her in and not let her escape.
We're talking about a basement of a house that's like a cabin made of wood. Everything in this village is very rustic, so it has that old world feel to it. And she runs out. There's a younger sister in a different area of the house. She sees her older sister running. She's scared, and she doesn't want her older sister to run away. She chases after her, gets closer and closer to her. The older sister is running along a very dangerous area at the side of a mountain. And then at some point, the older sister turns around quickly because she's going to say, hey, stop chasing after me.
She's kind of exasperated.
And accidentally hits the little sister and pushes her over the edge. And it happens so fast, we're in shock. And there was no sound even of screaming as she fell. It was just silent. Very effective. And we were both like, oh my gosh, right at the beginning of the film this happens. So at that point, you look down over the mountain and you see what looks like a dead body. And that is how this whole thing starts.
Yeah, and it's very, very sudden. Kind of reminded me of a very specific moment in Sirat. Everybody knows what it is who's seen the movie. We're not going to spoil it if you haven't. Reminds me of that. It's shocking. Shocking. Oh my God, that's how this is opening?
Wow.
Wow, the courage. And it bears mentioning that this thing is split in chapters.
Oh, yeah.
Each one with their own title.
Right.
So that's a prologue, yeah. And then maybe after that, it goes into chapter one. But that was like, wow. And like Jeannie said, it looks like a mountain village in Eastern Europe with wooden roofs. Maybe the walls are made of rock, I think.
Maybe.
But the
a lot of wood.
A lot of wood, for sure. And it looks old.
Right.
Even if it's not a period piece.
And shot on location in Slovakia.
Shot in Slovakia, for real.
Something that you don't normally see. The landscapes were beautiful, the big open spaces, lots of fields as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie that's going to give you something you're not expecting to get or that you're not used to. Because all the folklore that we get in the West, it's from Eastern Europe, usually. Even was the guy that does the fables.
Hans Christian Andersen?
Yeah. So Hans Christian Andersen, of course, German. All of these fairy tales are from German folklore.
What about the Brothers Grimm?
Same idea. I think it's the same region.
Hans Christian Andersen, Denmark. Brothers Grimm,
Germany. Northern Europe, Central Europe. And a lot of it, like we get from the Witcher series, is Eastern Europe. all of these different folkloric tales from these territories before they were even nations. Their roots are all here. And this movie very much takes advantage of that, giving us the folklore around witches and bringing that to modern day, even if the location is the same.
The prologue, it's basically a flashback because years later, the movie actually begins. As we said with the IMDb description, the young woman returning to her native mountain village, searching for answers about her childhood. Well, searching for answers about her sister. The protagonist, her name is Charlotta. She comes back to the village. She is the older sister. She didn't just go there of her own accord. She was summoned with a letter from what appears to have been the mayor's office, indicating that she had an inheritance, that her mother passed away and gave her something. Late at night, she actually explores the area where her mother's property is, and that was the cabin that they were in at the very beginning of the film. She finds out that it has been burned to the ground. So she's wondering, why was I summoned here? She goes to the mayor's office the next day and gives them the letter from the mayor saying that she was summoned for this inheritance hearing. Everybody is perplexed. They have no idea why she's there. They realize who she is. She is the older sister who basically caused her younger sister's supposed death, and she shows up years later after she had run away. So they're very confused, and they don't know why she's there, and they don't understand where this letter came from. And then she's also confused, of course, because she's wondering, well, why is this cabin burned down? What property are we talking about that I inherited? So she ends up taking up residence in another cabin that's fairly close by that's been abandoned. And why has it been abandoned? It was actually inhabited by the town witch back in the day. No one wants to touch it. But it has a lot of interesting things in there that she recognizes. She actually opens up a chest and she rummages through it and she remembers some things from her past.
She finds a stuffed bear inside it that used to be hers. Kind of like a mama bear with a pouch. But instead of being anything else in there, like a baby bear or whatever, there's like a tooth inside it. And she recognizes other items and she's kind of wondering, why did the witch have those items?
There's also a big lock of hair, like a ponytail, that was cut and left in there. And we see as a flashback the witch cutting off her own hair and putting it in that chest. So we don't know why she cut it off, but it's, again, part of the folklore, part of a ritual.
And it's kind of interesting that when she first gets to this place, she hears some noise and some of the local youth shows up, riding some quads and stuff. And they are clearly afraid of the house. They say the place is haunted or cursed or whatever. They almost start a fire outside to ward off evil spirits. So she kind of interrupts them and they're like, what are you doing here? And she says, no, I'm staying here. And they say, you shouldn't. So it's interesting how it's very early on established that this is the witch's house, that it's possibly haunted / cursed, but she's going to stay there anyway.
During her stay, she befriends another person in the village. Her name is Mira. Like Charlotta, Mira is not afraid. She's a strong woman. She's comfortable in her own skin, and they form a fast friendship. But a lot of other people in the village are very superstitious. They're very old world, and they are afraid of that cabin. They also realize that Charlotta is who she is, the girl that ran away after her own sister fell from the side of the cliff. They wonder how that happened because no one's witnessed it. So they're wondering, well, did she push her? What really happened that day? Some of them welcome her with open arms, but others are very suspicious of her.
And that's kind of the basic setup. There's a mystery at the root of the film that I think is done really well. And we go with this protagonist as she tries to uncover her past, understand her past, but also deal with the fact that while clearly there's some pagan roots in this village with almost like a Wicca thing going on, everyone now is very Christian and they totally renege on pagan roots.
Well, what's interesting is that there's another character named Helena. She got injured at one point, and I know her mother, named Anna, runs into her home and says, I need the salts. It was something that sounded very ritualistic. It feels like she's got one foot in paganism and one foot in Christianity.
Exactly. And because she was really the bridge between that past, for now it's unknown, and the present, where they're very religious and very Christian, at least on the surface. So she's kind of, like Jeannie said, she's between the two worlds.
Throughout this entire movie, you see a lot of quick flashbacks of the fall and of the witch Otila. She gets tied to a tree.
They stoned her. They hit her with a rock. So basically, after the body of the sister, the younger sister, is found at the bottom of the cliff, the witch heals the girl and raises her as her own. And then the villagers steal the girl from the witch. Losing the girl forever, she cuts off her hair, puts it in the chest, and then she walks barefoot through the woods until the snakes bite her and kill her. But that happens later in the movie. Early in the movie, we are meant to believe that she is stoned to death by the villagers.
So it says, for years the villagers believed the witch Ottila took Tamara after the fall. This led to the belief that Tamara was never a corpse to be brought back, but rather a wild child or changeling living in the woods. So Ottila did take the body, and she adopted her. She was running around trying to get help, but nothing ever happened, so she just took the body. She didn't reanimate it or anything. I think she wasn't really dead. We don't know, actually, though. It could be that she was dead and she brought her back to life. That's another interesting piece of information that we don't know about. We should go back to Mira. She's an herbalist. She's like full force into more of the pagan arts. But what's really interesting is she's the one who later in the film says, my computer is still here. And I'm thinking, where did that come from? Because no one's been talking about computers at all throughout the whole film. And you're taken into this universe where everything is very rustic and low tech or no tech. And then all of a sudden the word computer is mentioned. So that was an interesting, jarring statement from Mira, who is an herbalist. Some other characters in the film and people in the village, there's these super sexist guys. One of them is maybe dating, I shouldn't even say that, screwing around with Mira. And he does this goofy thing where he shows up and he licks the window while she's in there trying to brush her teeth. So there's that guy. And then there's another guy who's married. He oppresses his wife, and he also runs around and tries to screw around with other women. He tries to screw around with Mira, and I think at one point he tries to do something with our protagonist. So he's a real sexist, annoying guy. But there's a cool guy there who happens to be a shepherd. The protagonist, Charlotta, sees him. His name is Rado. Sees him in the field, just lying there, taking a break with a book, Walden, in the middle of herding sheep, I believe. But he's just lying there and enjoying himself, and she sees him twice, and at some point they strike up a friendship and then end up being together.
At some point he turns to Charlotta and says, you have to be a witch to be able to summon me. We think that's a Pan reference. And even later, when there's a big bonfire at Midsummer, where Charlotta is dancing with Rado, there's even a question, is he really there? The movie leaves that a little nebulous.
What I also thought was interesting is that he did say, did you summon me? And even not worrying about the Pan possibility, but he does feel like Pan. I see the resemblance as well. But even without that, just the fact that you're wondering, did she summon him? And if she summoned him, is he real? We do then end up seeing him lying in a field with both women, with Mira and Charlotta. And clearly Mira knows he's there. But again, Mira is very much into paganism and an herbalist. So you start to wonder at that point, is Mira possibly a witch? So is Charlotta a witch? Is Mira a witch? And then we have an actual witch, Ottila, who is nowhere to be found.
But I will say that Mira is introduced lying in the moonlight, basically, without any clothes, and saying that she's bathing in the moonlight.
Right.
So I think it's very clearly established that Mira does have some sort of affinity for nature, for paganism, etc.
Luis did some research on the snake that shows up. It's a white snake. Do we call it an albino snake?
Yeah, I thought it was an albino snake, but there are species, I guess, that can be white. So I'm not sure, but it's definitely a white snake. We see that early on, white snake leaving the cabin where the witch used to live. The snakes had a very important symbolism here beyond the idea of transformation, which they actually address in the movie itself. So beyond being a symbol of transformation, the snake is like a guardian spirit, and supposedly each house is meant to have a guardian snake that lives by the entrance. And when someone dies or when something bad happens, the snake might leave. And if you kill that snake, not only could curse everyone inside it, but it's seen as a very bad thing to do. And at some point, Helena actually kills the white snake.
And what's interesting about her, she is exploring the idea that she may not be straight. Her mother, Anna, she's that one that's sort of the bridge between old world and new world. She's pulling Helena back. I think she's afraid for Helena, and she's also afraid of herself. She doesn't want to fully embrace the pagan world. At the same time, she has that background. It's almost like a self-hate thing with Anna.
It makes perfect sense because Anna secretly hates the fact that she still believes in those pagan concepts. The thing about the herbs, Anna wants to be a good Christian, but really has one foot firmly on the pagan side of things. Mm-hmm. She can't abandon it fully. And then her daughter wants to be, again, a good Christian, straight woman, but likes women instead, and is terrified of it.
And I believe she's in love with Mira.
Yes.
And Mira is supposedly straight. She likes men. But what's really interesting about Helena, when we see her for the first time, she is dressed in a way that's very, for lack of a better term, butch. She has an undershirt on, and she almost looks like a guy.
I thought she was male at first.
Yeah, exactly. She has that look. It felt like that's her comfortable way of being. There's a point at which they were going to church. She got herself to wear this extremely feminine dress. More feminine than anything that anybody had worn in the film. Very churchy. I don't think she was happy being in it, but I feel like that was an example of her fighting with her internal self.
It was.
It was an odd visual to see this woman who had been wearing the opposite type of clothing, not even a dress, but stuff that was very comfortable, almost unisex, almost male clothing. And then all of a sudden she's in this super, super feminine dress and she does not feel happy. It's very strange to see her in that dress, but we realize that she's coming out of a church. So again, her mother, Anna, will go to church and take her daughter there. So again, this part of the struggle, moving back and forth between the more traditional Christian elements and the pagan elements. Anna seems to have really focused in on the Christian aspect, even though she has pagan roots, with her daughter Helena. So Helena is being, in a lot of ways, repressed by her mother. That day, where she comes out of church, she is not very happy, and she ends up getting drunk for one reason or another. So the two women, Mira and Charlotta, take care of her at one point, but she's not very happy. So that was one interesting clue about her state of mind. We had mentioned that Mira is an herbalist. She threw something in everybody's drink during the Midsummer festival. We're talking her closer friends. And those people would be Charlotta, Helena, but also Rado the shepherd.
Mira had a special concoction that she put on their drinks. And then everybody hallucinated.
And they all got separated at one time and had their own experience. Although I didn't see Rado's experience. I only saw Charlotta's and Helena's experience.
Well, that's really interesting. We don't see anything from his perspective. We only see him in the context of the main character, I think.
Right. And now we wonder if he's real. This was a point at which I thought, maybe he's not real. Because Charlotta is dancing with him, right? All of a sudden, this other dude, this slob, another character, there's three guys that are really annoying, misogynist slobs. This one guy comes at her and starts dancing with her. And I'm thinking, did Rado disappear at that point?
Rado was in the background. You see him in the background.
See? So he had just been dancing with her.
And then the guy say she was dancing like a whore.
By herself?
Because if she was with a guy, they might not have approached her.
Exactly. So that made me think that maybe he isn't there. It's not like they cut in. Yeah. And then you said he was in the background. I didn't even see him at all. So that's interesting because it could indeed be that he was made up. But going back to the three of them were on the ground together with Mira. Yeah. Mira sees him. But then again, we don't know what Mira's situation is. But yeah, they all have these different experiences during this drug-induced time at the Midsummer Festival. And maybe we should talk about those experiences. Helena sees a group of women, and they're all dancing around nude. And it looks wonderful at first. And then at Midsummer, we talked a little bit about Midsummer, the celebration, the fact that everybody got kind of drugged by Mira's concoction. Helena ends up having another experience. She goes out into the woods. She sees these nude women dancing around. It looks very pagan, very almost goddess-like. So they're wearing body paint and it's shining in the dark. It's UV light. It was a very interesting scene. And everybody looks very peaceful, but also energetic because they're dancing around a fire. Very traditional, let's say, tropish pagan movements. So she witnesses this and it looks very welcoming. So she starts to head toward that. And all of a sudden, as she gets closer and closer to this group of women, they change. they start to look like they're sort of suffocating her. They're coming at her almost like a mob, and they feel witch-like in a bad way. It all changes from this peaceful, wonderful, communal circle to almost like she's being suffocated by them. My read on that is that shows her going back and forth between what she really wants and what she's told she needs by her mother and by society.
The end of the sequence with the women dancing and kind of embracing her and accepting her as one of their own. And there's a very heavy sexual connotation here as well. She desires them, they desire her, everything's good. But then they suddenly all get her mother's face.
Yeah, during this sequence that Helena is experiencing, it gets to the point before things change and look very scary for her. She actually sees Mira there and starts to kiss her, and they have a really nice kiss. But then it changes, and Louise pointed out that the faces of all the women in this group start to look like her mother, Anna. This clearly is stating, in no uncertain terms, that her mother has repressed her to the point where she can't even enjoy her life and enjoy who she is as a person. She's being brought back to this strict upbringing through her mother, and she can't explore herself. So contrast that with Charlotta's experience. Charlotta also goes into the woods and has a similar experience with people dancing around. She walks into different spaces in the forest and in the woods that have different color schemes. I noticed that there was sort of a reddish scheme, there was a bluish scheme. She goes from one area of the forest to another. There was also a group of women dancing with her,
Yeah,
right?
she sees mounds of people basically in different parts of the forest, in different configurations, but she just kind of walks by them. She stumbles upon Rado and they get together. Midsummer's happening, and then the kids are talking to the father and saying, hey, they won't let us ride the quads or something like that. And the father's like, shut up and get out of here.
Oh, yeah. The father is not only abusive to women, but he's abusive to his own kids. Obviously, his wife. He forces himself on her at any time, won't let her experience joy during sex, and tries to have sex with other women. But he's abusive to his two boys. I wonder how they're going to turn out. And they, at one point, run off.
They run off. They notice the kids are missing during Midsummer, and that's when a big commotion starts. And when that happens, that's when everybody gets kind of split up. And the four that drank the concoction are now high and seeing things in the woods. And that's how Helena has an encounter with the women around the fire. That's how Charlotta eventually walks through the forest spirits / people and finds Rado. I don't remember what happens to Mira in the sequence. All I know is that in the morning they meet at the cliff, Mira and Charlotta. And that's when Charlotta figures out that Mira is her sister.
Yes. So again, going back to Helena, what happens to Helena after this experience with the women?
She runs through the woods, falls off the cliff, and dies.
The two of them sitting on the cliff and figuring out who they are. Does anybody get the body?
They don't see her body somehow. The body's found later. It's very weird.
Isn't that? I thought that was weird too.
It could be an editing flaw because
I thought that was strange.
Because
I thought they were going to sit there and look at her down
They literally are talking.
Well, didn't they think, what happened to Helena?
They just don't know.
Oh gosh, it's so confusing.
They literally don't know. It's an editing flaw, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
Because the girls had the scene by the cliff together, and then they go back in town.
So who finds Helena? The goofy guys that we all love to hate end up finding Helena under the cliff. So it was kind of interesting because she's also part of their group. She's the woman that sort of hangs out with them. They're not going to do anything with, and they're not going to abuse because they see her as one of them.
Okay, now this is really off here. They discovered their sisters during the day.
Yeah, the day
after Midsummer.
And then that night is when they find Helena.
So a whole 24 hours later, when it's dark again, they find her.
That's when they find Helena.
How does that happen?
But she's not dead. She's
dying.
Yeah, but you acted like she was already dead. You said kerplunk, she falls, she's dead.
I said goodbye.
Yeah, but that's not what happened. She's brought up and she's still alive.
Goodbye,
She's still alive. Yes, the next day, everybody's worried about Helena, but that is the moment in which the two women, Charlotta, who's the protagonist, and Mira, who's very close to being a protagonist, they're sitting on the cliff. Charlotta she looks down and she actually sees an image of Mira lying down at the bottom of the cliff instead of her sister. But I'm thinking, where's Helena? So that was the confusion.
It's probably a different cliff.
It might be a different cliff. But in any case, here's what happens. She sees this image of Mira down at the bottom of the cliff. An image that used to be her sister down at the bottom of the cliff, the little girl. And then it comes to her. She realizes, oh, you're my sister. She was also told by villagers about a wild child that was being taken care of by Ortila in the woods. And she thought to herself, well, who's the wild child? Is that Tamara, my sister? No one has ever found Tamara's body. She thought, well, then maybe Tamara is alive. She isn't dead. She isn't at the bottom of the cliff. She left because no one could find her long ago. And then, of course, we as an audience at one point think, well, Charlotta's the wild child. We're very confused. We don't know who's what.
I meant to say that. This is very puzzling because clearly the story the movie tells is that there's two sisters. And I actually just rewatched the beginning and I caught it. The mother is abusive. And one of the sisters is evil, bad, something. And she's in the basement area.
That's the older sister.
The older
Charlotta.
sister. So Charlotta runs away, followed by, quote unquote, the good sister, the younger sister. And the whole tragedy happens. Now the movie will tell us very soon that the mother actually hung herself after that. So when Attila finds Tamara's body at the bottom of the cliff and carries her to Tamara's mother's house or cabin, and no one opens the door, she's forced to take care of the child herself, and actually she nurses her back to health. So when the girl is feeling well enough, she goes to her own house, and she goes in through a window or something, and she lights a lantern, and she sees her mother's dead body. She hung herself after the two girls ran away. Panicking, she basically drops the lantern on the ground and sets the house on fire.
And so remember at the beginning when Charlotta comes into town and gets summoned to attend this inheritance hearing, she's thinking, well, what did I possibly inherit? Probably the cabin. Otherwise, what would it be? She finds out that the cabin was burned to the ground. No one can tell her why, but it turns out that her younger sister, Tamara, who's now known as Mira, burned down the cabin by mistake, by knocking over a lantern. We find out that Mira is indeed Tamara, her sister. And at one point, Charlotta learns how the cabin burned down. And then she realizes, wait a minute. She starts looking around at papers in Mira's room and discovers versions of the mayor's letter, the summons. And she realizes that it was Mira all along that had summoned her. And I think the word summon is very cool because we have the mayor summoning her to an inheritance hearing. We have Mira really summoning her, not necessarily in a magical sense, even though she might have those powers, but done through this mayor's letter that's not even real, it's fake. And Rado has already indicated that he was summoned by Charlotta. The use of summons as a pun was, I thought, very interesting. Or let's say a double entendre.
What's really interesting about the mystery, the core of this film, is the identity of the girls. They kind of gloss over it a little bit as far as we can understand. What happens is that as Attila nurses Tamara back to life, Tamara is eventually stolen by someone in the village. She is taken. I don't think the movie explains where she actually grows up because at some point Charlotta asks Mira what she was doing in such a small town and she says, I grew up in a different area and I wanted to find a place to live. And it turns out that it's a lot cheaper here near the cursed cabin.
If Mira was adopted, so to speak, not legally, but taken care of by the witch Attila, did Mira, Tamara, did she grow up in the cabin? Maybe she did. Maybe she grew up with Attila in the cabin and no one wanted to go near the cabin because they were afraid of the witch. They've never set fire to the cabin. They never destroyed it all these years. It was almost like a legend, the witch house. And I still don't understand what happened to Attila. I know she was stoned, like you said. She was blamed for the death or the disappearance of Tamara. But yeah, she's the one who has the child. Why didn't she just provide the child to the town? Where did she grow up?
They don't say. She was stolen and grew up somewhere else.
Stolen by whom?
By the villagers.
So basically, the whole town knows that Tamara is alive.
Someone in town knows.
Someone in town. Who? I'm not blaming the film. So why is she being raised by this woman and no one knows? Right? Is it so far off that
They
no one
think
sees
Tamara
it?
has died.
And that's why they stone her. And as if she's cursing everybody. The reason why they're not having anybody live in that particular cabin is that they feel like it's cursed. Why would it be cursed? Because Attila is dead, and a dead witch, is cursing the cabin.
Yeah.
What other reason would they have to be worried?
Yeah.
No one messes with this house.
That's
No
the
one
witch's
lives
house.
with. No one is a guest in the house. No one burns it down. No one does anything to the house. Why? We didn't talk about this, but another symbol is the wolf. We talked about the snake, but there's also the wolf. So in Eastern European and Slavic folklore, the wolf embodies a complex duality of fear and reverence. It represents the untamable wilderness and aggressive outsider, yet it also holds deep spiritual significance as a messenger to the gods and a protector of the forest. So do we know who took her and how she ended up changing her name to Mira? It's very confusing. So she runs to Attila, and they see the cabin burned down that she burns by mistake. But then what happens after that? She raises her, but at what point is she taken away?
It's really fast. Someone comes in and snatches her.
I'm super confused about Mira's path. So maybe she was simply kidnapped. She didn't understand what happened, and she ended up growing up in the village.
So she said she grew up somewhere else and she moved to the village on purpose because it was cheaper.
That doesn't make any sense.
She
Some
literally said that.
dude just kidnapped her.
Yeah, she was raised by another
Was he
family.
a wanderer?
Could be. Anyone that knew
A
the woman was a
derelict?
witch, and they felt that she didn't deserve to have a child.
But he then drove her out of the town and had her
Possibly.
raised
And
elsewhere?
the fact that they didn't...
This is so confusing. And how did she change her name to Mira? It looks like she was abducted.
She was abducted.
But where was she taken? So there's a little bit of a mystery here about what happened to Tamara, who ends up changing her name to Mira. She clearly knows who she is. She knows she's the sister of Charlotta. So it's not like her memory was wiped.
No,
But
not
at
at all.
that young of an age to be abducted and taken somewhere else, I mean, you could, in essence, forget all that. The fact that she summoned her later in life, I don't know who changed her name to Mira. I don't know if it was people that abducted her changed her
Yeah.
name and why she ended up moving back. So maybe it's a double situation where both sisters moved back into town at different times of their lives. One changed her name before she moved back. I don't even know if she had that same name after she was abducted. Maybe she was renamed. We don't know. So that's the confusing part. But she knew enough about her background that she wanted to find her sister, and she'd been trying to do it pretty much all her life. So that's the real mystery. What happened with Mira? Maybe that was clear in the film, but we're not seeing it. It's just not something that we're noticing.
Yeah. Charlotta, after she ran away, she was in an orphanage. And
Right.
she grew up in a big city, Bratislava, I think, which is
Maybe.
the capital of Slovakia. So that's where she grew up.
Charlotta is a registered nurse. She ends up, that's her avocation. So when she comes back to the village and Helena falls off the cliff and she has something wedged in her chest, because we were talking before, they find her, the guys, the weird guys, they bring her back into town and her mother's like, don't touch her. Everybody thinks that Charlotta's a witch and that she's evil. Meanwhile, she's the only person in the village who has the wherewithal to take care of Helena and save her because she is a registered nurse. And again, that's more progressive. We're not talking about pagan science here. We're talking about traditional medicine. And they still won't let her touch her. So what ends up happening? Helena dies.
Yeah.
Another thing about Charlotta, early on, we see that she has a big scar. It looks like a cesarean scar in her abdomen area, let's say. And she's still healing from that. Well, it turns out that she had a very late stage miscarriage and they had to take the baby out. Sadly, was stillborn and already had died. So she's suffering from that. And also the person that she was with, he left her when that happened. So she's also dealing with that. And it turns out she has a lot of anxiety and she pulls out her hair. At one point, she goes into the woods and feels like she's at one with nature and she feels comfortable taking off her wig. We find out that she's practically bald. That was an interesting scene because it's almost associated with being a witch. The lack of hair, the loss of hair.
She has trichotillomania, which is a mental health disorder where the person picks and plucks hair from her eyebrows and from the head itself. So she has very severe hair loss and has to wear a wig because of it. That's the real world explanation the movie gives us.
Right.
For her to be having little to no hair and having to wear a wig, which is traditionally associated with witches.
Right.
The famous 1990 movie Witches, which is terrifying, shows them all with some horrible scarred scalps, all of them. So that's the direct reference to that, and the movie is telling us, oh yeah, she's probably a witch.
And I can also say The Ugly Stepsister.
Mm-hmm.
We reviewed that
True.
last year, and there's an element of the witch and that type of visual with the hair loss.
And furthermore, when she first reveals that she's wearing a wig, that happens right after we hear the sound of trees being cut, and she looks up a hill and she sees that her beloved forest is being destroyed by men cutting down trees and making money of it. That's actually a very real problem in Eastern Europe. In some of these places, the only way that people can make a living is by chopping down trees. The way the movie is saying she's here to defend this land, it's her land, and officially, yeah, she's a witch.
The moment that she hears the sound, she has a very pleasant look on her face, and she takes off the wig. It feels like she's at one with nature. So the sound, which is anti-nature, triggers a pro-nature response and a very satisfied look on her face. So it's almost as if she was reminded that the forest is in danger, but she somehow has hope that the forest will prevail.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about final thoughts here?
Yeah, I'm very happy with this film. I think it's a great example of doing a lot with little. Excellent acting all around. This screenplay, as far as we can tell from the translation, is great. It's not some brilliant writing, but it's very well done, and nothing jumps at you as saying, oh, this is a terrible line, or this makes no sense. I think it's a little muddled in parts. The way Mira grew up and where she grew up, it's still a big blank spot for me. Her explanation that she grew up out of town and moved there because it's cheaper might be a lie. Maybe she grew up there after all, because when she told Charlotta that, it was before Charlotta knew Mira was her sister. So maybe that was something she lied to Charlotta early on.
She lied about that as a cover story, I think.
Possibly she did grow up in the village as some found child. Maybe she was raised by someone. Maybe Anna partially raised her.
But they keep talking about wild child as if they don't know who the wild child is.
Oh, there's two types of wild child. The first type of wild child is a child that doesn't listen to you, who's rebellious, who's aggressive, who's loud. And clearly that was Charlotta as a young girl, and that's why her mother abused her and kept her locked in the basement, and the movie opens with verbal abuse. And that's a type of wild child. The second type is the child that's raised in the woods and is in tune with nature and not with society. In that case, Mira is the wild child. Mm-hmm. Why? Because after suffering that accident, she is brought back to life by a quote-unquote witch, and she is raised in the pagan ways. That also makes her a wild child. So in the end, you can say that being a wild child goes against being raised a good Christian, which is what the town has kind of become.
Right.
They're turning their back on the forest. They're turning their back on paganism.
Yes. So in summary, you're saying that Charlotta was the original quote-unquote wild child because she apparently was misbehaving or was very assertive, and that was a problem. And her mother was abusive anyway, so it might have ended up happening to Tamara as well as she got older. And then Tamara ends up being a wild child in another sense because she's raised by Ottila, the witch, primarily in the forest, away from it all, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's excellent as far as horror adjacent goes. I wouldn't call it elevated horror. I think it's better than that. It's really folk horror, deeply rooted in Eastern European lore and legend and folklore. It does a perfect job telling the story, bringing you in, immersing you in the world, while also addressing sexism, misogyny, the role of the patriarchy, and how these men think they're entitled to everything. They're entitled to the trees, they're entitled to the women, they're entitled to women who are not their wives, they're entitled to forcible sex without consent.
So the men in the village, those guys that we talked about before that are horrible, they abduct or kidnap the two main characters, Charlotta and Mira, and blame them for the disappearance of the two boys that sort of ran off at the end of Midsummer. There is some trauma in the village because of what happened to the girls, and people were abducted. And clearly, Tamara was abducted. We still don't know what happened there. And one ran off, although people were wondering if she was even alive. So now they figured that one out. What's interesting is the wife of this guy that's horrible. It forces himself on her. That's the mother of the two little boys who disappeared. She participates in the kidnapping. And that shows you another side of things where women are so subservient to their men that they participate in abuse of other women and themselves. And that's something else that's being explored in this film. So she goes into the cabin and questions the women and actually sees a sonogram and realizes what it is and indicates that someone, obviously it was Charlotta, had a baby. She assumed that she had the baby, and then she realizes she lost it. But at some point, she runs out, and it turns out that the little boys are found, and they're fine, and they're running around. And she runs out. She's not sure what's going on. And one of the dudes that's standing there holding a gun against the other women, he was trying to give her some privacy to talk to the two women. So he doesn't even know what's going on inside the cabin. So when the mother does run out, there's a bit of confusion. The two women end up being able to escape and run away. So the guy with the gun is confused about who's running where and what, and he just fires his gun without thinking. And guess what? He shoots the mother of the two little boys. He blames it on one of the women, as if a woman had grabbed the gun from him and shot her. She's just injured.
They don't tell us. She's just injured, and it's interesting because right before that happens, the guardian spirit goes into the house. He tries to shoot the white snake at first, and the gun is not loaded or something, so he goes back in and loads it. And that's when he sees that one of the women have escaped. It's Charlotta. And as he thinks he's seeing Charlotta running in the distance, he fires. And that could be seen again as the spirit protecting Charlotta. Why? Because maybe he made him see Charlotta running, when in fact it was the other guy's wife.
The snake is guarding this cabin that was the witch's cabin, Ottila, and who's been residing there? Charlotta. So she is being protected. So when she runs out, he doesn't shoot her, he shoots the mother of the children. The mother's name is Zofa. We don't know what happens with the two little boys. Maybe they were abducted. Who knows? There's an epilogue where we see the sisters in the lake together, swimming. Charlotta has a new wig, I'm assuming. It looks very styled. I don't think that's her hair. It's, for some reason, another wig. Maybe it's her new hair, but then that means many months have gone by. Actually, she goes in the water and nothing comes out of her head, right? That could be her actual hair.
Oh, yeah. Remember the hairstyle changed? Yeah, it's her real hair.
It's so coiffed, it looks like a wig. Okay, so her hair has grown back, we think. Clearly, she's better. So a lot of this anxiety happened because of her sister, because of not knowing who her sister was, not knowing who she was. Now things have come full circle. They're reunited, and all is well in the world, at least for the two sisters.
Except that the villagers are all cursed now because the boys probably were never found, and the boy's mother, Sofa, is either dead or dealing with a big injury. The only happy ending is for the two siblings.
Right. And, Helena's dead as well. And then the dudes, the patriarchy reigns, basically.
But let's not forget that Helena killed a white snake.
That's true. Helena killed a white snake. That caused all of this to happen. She cursed herself, basically. I know we brought this additional information on when we were doing our final impressions. I'll say what I've already said. The film was very atmospheric, immersive. It was all about these themes that we've already discussed. This idea of having one foot in the past, one foot in the present, one foot in paganism, one foot in Christianity. This idea of who's a witch, who isn't. The mystery of the two sisters, because they both have a mysterious past, and them being reunited. The patriarchy, the issue of misogyny. This pagan element also includes this Pan-like character. They were exploring a lot. The symbolism with the snake, the wolf, the witch, the true witch. We assume this person was an actual witch who ended up dying. The abuse, the parental abuse with the mother. We don't know what happened to the father. It was a lot about patriarchy, but there was a single mother abusing kids. It just shows that everything isn't black and white. And then we have the character of Helena who's struggling with her identity. That doesn't end well. They were covering a lot of different themes in this film, and I think they did a good job because it could have been just garbled, and it wasn't. It wasn't scary. As we said, horror adjacent. So if you're looking for scares, jump scares, gore, anything like that, you're not going to find it here. However, if you're interested in folklore, Eastern European folklore in particular, this will be an extremely interesting film for you. Well acted, well directed. The script is excellent. There was nothing that seemed off. I did feel that it was a longer movie than it really was, but that is not because it was boring or felt slow. I know that some people have commented that it felt a little slow to them, but for me, that wasn't an issue at all.
It's definitely not slow. No real pacing problems here.
No.
I think it just has a very chunky B-plot. The situation with Helena's self-discovery and then rejection of who she truly is. And the mystery can be a little confusing. Sometimes there's a couple unexplained things, which is not bad, but you kind of feel like something's not there. That's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, we're not getting true satisfaction with the Tamara to Mira transition.
And because some of the stuff on the other side of the equation, the boys, we don't know what happened to them. We don't know the fate of their mother who got shot. Some seems unrealized, I would say. But at the same time, I have to say that I am very pleased that the final sequence, which is hard to watch with the two women being held captive in Natila's cabin, that they are rescued effectively by Rado, which may or may not be a forest spirit, and by the guardian spirit, the guardian snake, the white snake, that left the home when Natila decided to kill herself and give herself to the snakes.
And now the snake's back.
And now the snake's back.
Yeah.
So basically the snake was brought back. And even if one of them got killed by Helena, they were always there for the two girls.
But I do want to say about Rado, he comes back with Charlotta to help rescue Mira. So it's not like he's some knight in shining armor. The snake is the true hero here. The snake is the reason why Charlotta is able to run out. Maybe she goes to get Rado. And then, of course, the snake is also the reason why Zofa and not Charlotta is injured or killed by the gunshot. I think that's the true hero of this particular scene. And then she does get Rado to come back with her, but I think she runs in before Rado does. So it's like nice to have help, but Rado was not an absolutely necessary ingredient.
I think Rado trips.
He does trip. I don't know if he comes in first or second, but it doesn't really matter. He does trip, but I think that was the actor tripping, and I think that was interesting that they left that in because he doesn't look as strong as Charlotta. He's sort of like a sidekick character, and I believe that Charlotta was the main reason why Mira was saved.
I almost forgot to mention, all the fire effects, I think they're all real.
Yeah.
All of it. Of course, it's easier to do that if you're in Slovakia with less regulations and stuff and in the middle of the woods maybe.
Right.
But they did it. That cabin burned out for real. That is not CG.
Wow, that cabin burned
CG.
down. So there were two different cabins that burned down. One was the cabin, I don't know if they just used that same footage for the other cabin, but
They could,
there was a
because
cabin
they
burned
showed
down.
one fire starting from the inside and one fire from the outside.
Right.
I don't know if they did two, but they
Might
look the
just be
same
one.
design-wise. They could be the same from different angles. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
All I can say is that CG fire is very easy to spot.
Oh yeah, and it
Even
looks
in really
bad.
expensive movies. Actually, water and fire don't scale. So if you're just using miniatures with water or fire, or if you're using fake fire and fake water, unless you're like at the top of your game, it's gonna look fake. But this movie, maybe because it's made in Slovakia with less regulations and with a decent budget for the kind of production it is, it's not bad at all.
No, it's not bad at all.
It looks perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100%. There's literally nothing to complain about the effects. And even when they go really low tech, like people were having hallucinations in the woods with the UV light, that looks great too.
Yeah, that is low tech, and we recognized it as such, but it looked cool.
Yeah.
And the stuff was very creative, nicely done, artistically. Is there anything else we want to say before we
No, I think
sign
that's
off?
it.
All right. So I guess we're giving this a thumbs up, but we're going to say that it is indeed horror adjacent. It's definitely folk horror, but I would say more folklore than horror.
Yeah, I gave it a glowy thumbs up.
UV light, glow, thumbs up. I guess it's time to bid you adieu. Bye.
For
For
now.
now.
For now.
Toodaloo.